Welcome back to Business Daily, reaching you from Trust TV. Before we went on that break, I told you we're going to go into Ghana. Now, earlier in the week, we see that there's a story coming out from Ghana about a boom in the gold. And one of it is that the Ghana gold revenue has surged by 53% and hitting a record of $12 billion in 2024. That is a 53.2% increase, driven by 30% rise in global gold prices and higher production. Now, the UAE leads as the top buyer at 40%, followed by Switzerland at 30%, South Africa 22%, and India at 6.8%. We'll look into the conversation as we go. Joining us from Accra, Ghana to further discuss is Larte, business journalist at Channel 1 TV and CITI FM. Good morning, Ni.
Good morning. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for joining us on Business Day today on Trust TV. I know that you're like 1 hour behind, but let's discuss the story. We see there's been a rise by 53%. Can you tell us more about that?
Well, so what we know is that gold export amounted to some $12 billion by the end of 2024, up from the $7 billion recorded. And so two main reasons. One is because of increase in production in terms of gold in the country, as well as rising gold prices on the world market. So these are two factors accounting for the increase in gold exports in the country. And as you may be well aware, Ghana is Africa's largest gold producer, and so gold has always dominated our total exports. And so if you check the total exports of the country, gold is always dominating ahead of cocoa rather, as well as crude oil. So these are the developments. The latest data produced by the central bank, that's the Bank of Ghana, by the end of December 2024, gave us these details.
All right. So we've seen that a couple of things have taken place. Now, the UAE leads as your top buyer, 40%, followed by Switzerland, 30%, South Africa, 22%, and India, 6.8%. We equally see now that the 57% of your export earnings come from gold. Prior to now, how has that been?
It's always been good, and so it has always been good, like I was explaining earlier. And so most of the mining companies in the country are ramping up effort to increase gold production. You know that because of the issue of illegal small-scale mining, which we refer to as galamsey here, the mining companies are stepping up effort to ensure that they increase production. Mind you, the governments, both previous governments and the current government, have also initiated a number of policies when it comes to gold. They are using gold to trade oil. They are using gold to trade more of other things in the country. So, for example, the current government is looking at establishing a gold board, among other things, to ensure that we reduce smuggling. We also increase production as well as increase our earnings. The previous government, which was voted out of power last year, also introduced the gold for oil policy, with the central bank also introducing what has become known as the gold coin initiative. All of these ensuring that we capitalize on the natural resource here in the country to ensure that the country reap its full potential when it comes to economic benefits. And so it has always been gold for Ghana.
All right, now, so gold mining, now this makes up the most of, gold itself makes up the most of your exports and your earnings. However, how has gold mining impacted the employment sector in Ghana?
Well, so you know that we do not have a lot of indigenous mining companies in Ghana. Most of the companies that we have are foreign owned. And so they are trying as much as possible to ensure that as part of their corporate social responsibility, they employ local community members to ensure that some of these persons are also employed in the communities in which they operate. So, for example, if you take Anglo Gold Ashanti, for example, in Obuasi, in the Ashanti region, about 80% of their total workforce is local community members. And this is a deliberate measure to ensure that the communities in which they operate, the residents there also benefit from the activities of gold mining. So the mining companies have always prioritized the employment of local citizens there in the areas in which they operate as part of them. So the mining communities or the mining firms are actually also contributing significantly when it comes to revenue generation in the country. You see a lot of the companies paying millions of dollars in terms of taxes, and so the government also generates some form of revenue in there. Not only that, they are also ensuring that they embark on corporate social responsibility activities. A lot of the mining companies are also embarking on projects such as school building, health, as well as community development. So if you go to most of the mining companies, you realize that the firms there have established schools, they've established clinics, among other things, all in a bit to ensure that the residents in the communities in which they operate are not deprived of, basic social amenities.
Okay, so now, how has the gold revenue impacted the country's national debt? Because I know last year when we were discussing on the program with another of your colleague and a lawyer about the debt profile during the elections, how has this been able to impact the debt and overall economic stability of Ghana?
It's quite interesting because, the country is at a crossroads when it comes to debt. You know that we are currently under an IMF program.
Yeah.
We've also restructured most of our debt, both on the domestic and external front. And so the government only option now to raise, money is through the treasury bill market. And so gold, for example, if you look at the figures I mentioned to you early on, you realize that it contributes significantly to the total exports as well as general revenue of the country. So the country or the economic management do not toil with gold production at all. If you come to the country, realize that a very congenial environment is being created for the mining firms to operate. They are prioritizing safety, they are prioritizing sustainability to ensure that they contribute their quota to national development. Mind you, the recent budget that was read, you realize that the growth and sustainability levy for mining firms has actually been increased from 1% to 3%. And mining firms have given the indication that they are well with this particular increase because they want to contribute their quota to, the national revenues of the country. And so be as it may, you realize that gold's contribution to total revenue of the country is high. However, in terms of the debt, you would realize that it's not one of the thresholds, I must say, when it comes to settling debt in the country. More often than not, you get to see that the economic managers will go elsewhere to borrow money to ensure that they settle their debt. And so, be as it may, you realize that the revenue is going into more of government business other than the settling of debt. So I do not see gold being one of the components when it comes to debt settlement in the country.
All right, now let's go to something we talked about here equally on the program, but not on Business Day, on another program. That was the Galamsey situation. It was a big issue even for the elections last year in Ghana. Now, one of the things that Mohammed Dramani came on board with was that he was going to do something about it, which was the Galamsey, the illegal mining situation with gold. One, has he done anything about it? Has that had any impact so far on the gold mining situation in Ghana?
Well, the John Dramani Mahama government is just about 3 months old, and really he's trying as much as possible to put his government to order, making a lot of appointments and also settling some of the issues that he's taking over. And so as we speak, he's not made any significant step when it comes to dealing with illegal small-scale mining, also known as galamsey, in the country. But the situation, however, is that it has been more of a political talk right here in the country. Government is paying lip service to fighting the galamsey menace. It's more of this government failed to do it. What are you doing about it? And so really, we have not seen real action when it comes to dealing with illegal small-scale mining. And mind you, the production of gold in the country, you realize that the artisanal and small-scale miners are contributing their quota. However, because of the issue of illegal small-scale mining, you realize that most of our water bodies are being polluted. And so communities are being deprived of the water source they have, all because of illegal small-scale mining. And so you realize that most of the governments in the past, and even the current one, just as you mentioned, are trying to ensure that they bring in some policies, but the John Dramani Mahama government has not really taken any decisive step yet as far as illegal small-scale mining is concerned, just because he made a promise into the election. And so we wait to see what real action he will be taking going forward.
All right, now this new gold board that you mentioned that is coming on board, what challenges do you think they will face in regulating small-scale mining?
One, you realize that Ghana has had a multiplicity of gold schemes. Each time a government comes into power, that government will introduce one form of gold scheme or the other. And so we've not really seen the real benefits of some of these schemes in the country. You realize that they begin, once they are out of office, it dies. And so you realize that when the NPP government came into power and introduced the gold for oil policy, just as the Mahama government took over, the policy has been scrapped, and they are introducing the Ghana Gold Board. They are saying that they want to centralize, the production of gold to ensure that these aggregators come on board to ensure that they sell the gold to the appropriate people to reduce smuggling. Just yesterday, the finance minister revealed that the country lost about $12 billion as a result of gold smuggling in 2023 alone, and that is quite a huge amount of money. And so that is one of the issues the Ghana Gold Board is trying to deal with. As we speak, they've not begun work yet. A technical committee has just been set up. I think they have up to the end of this month to come up with their framework and operating guidelines. And so we'll be looking at what they will also bring on board. But just as you asked, the challenges, more often than not, we get to see that the political will to implement some of these things is not there. The system is already fragmented. We do not have data about these aggregators. And so it becomes very difficult for anyone to really monitor the activities of these aggregators. And so a lot of people, a lot of industry players have said that because of the duplicity of some of these policies and schemes that we have, this is not going to solve any problem at all. And so it is not really a solution to some of the challenges that we are seeing. Mind you, there are accusations that some of these political attacks are those behind the production of gold illegally, and they are also watching on in terms of the smuggling, the illicit financial flows and all that. You realize that gold is one of the issues when it comes to illicit financial flows in the country. And so you get to see a lot of civil society organizations raising concerns, trying as much as possible to compel the government to come up with a policy document that will serve as a blueprint in solving some of these issues. Mind you, the central bank recently also announced that its gold reserves has actually increased thanks to the gold for oil policy and some of the gold for the gold initiative that it also is. So we realize that our foreign reserves have also gone up, which will also serve as a buffer when it comes to some of the debt issues, just as you mentioned. And so in 2027, in 2028, you realize that we will see the government making some payments in terms of the debt restructuring that we see. So some of these reserves will go in, as well as the sinking fund that the government is trying to accumulate some funds in there to ensure that some of these payments are done. And so if you ask what challenges we are likely to see in terms of the goodwill, a lot of issues. The policy document we are yet to see. However, the system, as always, has been fragmented. The data is not there. People do not have real-time data to ensure that some of these issues that they want to solve are handled.
All right, now, so let's look at what are the risks, because I've been thinking about it. It's your major export, and we on here in Nigeria, we have that too. Crude oil. Crude oil is our major form of revenue. Now, what's the risk of the over-reliance on gold for Ghana's economy?
I asked this question because yesterday I was with one of the mining firms having a discussion with them, and so what they have actually identified as the risk in the production of gold is the cost in production. And so they are saying that the resource is abundant in the country. However, what is likely to affect them is if the cost of production continues to go high, they may have to shut down and pack their tools and go. And so if government does not step in to ensure that the cost of production for gold in the country is, something that the firms can contend with, then we can see that the over-reliance on gold will be a problem for the country. Hitherto, you realize that we are also depending heavily on cocoa, but because of the same issue of illegal small-scale mining, galamsey, and the swollen shoot disease, cocoa production has actually reduced in the country. Oil production, some of the firms are not meeting capacity, and so that is also going down by the day. And so the dominant has always been gold. And so if you ask what the risk of over-reliance on gold will be, then it will be the cost of production, because these firms use heavy materials. They also employ a lot of mind you, some of these firms do not go in for full production in some of the support services that they do. They always outsource, and so because of that, they are saying that it will only take a high cost of production for them to shut down.
All right, so I just have one question for you, one last question, and I'd like for you to just give it to us concise. Now, do you think that the Ghana's gold sector will eventually transition towards refining and jewelry products for higher value addition?
And come again, please. I lost you
The
briefly.
gold sector can eventually transition towards refining and jewelry production to give for higher value addition.
Okay, so
go ahead.
So I am looking at transparent gold purchasing processes. And so, for example, that Ghana is also a country that boasts of its rich and cultural heritage. And so if you ask of the ornament and what have you, you realize that it is all about transparency and also ethical sourcing, if you ask me, because the issue of illegal small-scale mining is also threatening the gold sector. And as a result, concerns arise as to how the country can comply with, international market standards or regulations. For example, not too long ago, we saw the EU threatening to ban cocoa from Ghana because of galamsey and its attendant challenges. And so,
due to time, we'll have to end the conversation here. Time won't allow us to go further in this conversation. And it's been a pleasure having you on Business Daily, telling us about the Ghana gold boom and the Ghana gold economy in general. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you.
And that's it for us today on Business Daily. We've been discussing the Ghana gold boom. Ghana had a very nice outing with gold last year at $12 billion, closing 2024, up by 53.2%. That's been our focus on Business Daily today. Same time, same place tomorrow. Don't forget to follow us on our social media platforms for more news, programs, and documentary. I am Chamaka Nwafor. Bye for now.